using profanity. Like, I jokingly say, like the F word can be like an adjective, a noun, a verb. Like, all right, we're back again, back in black, Back to the Future,
back in Black Band,
Black. Bam! Look at that, full circle.
Gosh, I'm a dad. Golly gee.
You really are. You really
Heck and
are.
shoot.
Heck and shoot. What did I say that you just were talking about? That actually
Gosh in heaven.
Gosh in heaven. It's a perfect segue. Gosh in heaven. Let's talk about words.
Yeah.
And why that's ridiculous.
The old gosh
really,
in heaven.
We are here to talk about words.
Yeah, we use enough
logos.
Of them,
Yeah. I'm sorry about that, everyone. I apologize for the amount of words.
Unapologetic. No, actually, yeah, when I do, like, review the podcast and stuff like that before they go out, I'm just, like, listening to myself, droning on. I'm trying, everybody. I promise. I'm trying to work on it. Just like, get to the point. What are you saying?
It's because you like to paint a picture, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I do. When I tell a story, that's the biggest issue. When I tell a story, I'm crystal up here, and I want to give that to you guys so you know exactly where I'm coming from. But it's not necessary.
Not always, but sometimes it's nice.
Well, I'm not as articulate as I would like to be, so that's part of it. I require more words to get my point across. Yeah.
Well, words can be extremely articulate, and they cannot. You can use tons of fillers. You can just kind of adjectives and all these different things. And I feel like that's who we are more so than the concise people, because, what should take us probably 20, 30 minutes takes us an hour and 15. So
yeah, it's all right.
Clearly.
That's the whole point, for us to just babble on, go down some topics and rabbit holes that other people don't have time for in their life. Yeah. We make the time to babble on about nothing.
And you know what? I think we're better for it.
I think we are. Yeah. We're just talking about the importance of definitions and knowing the words. And nowadays, it's a travesty, I would say, with how words are overused and how the true definition is lost, and certain words are banned and cancel culture and all that crap. So there's just so much, I think, that goes into it, and we just take language for granted, and we really shouldn't, because without language, where would we be?
True.
But
very true.
Words are important. You read older literature, and you're just like, man. So reading Common Sense by Thomas Paine, one of the founding fathers, it's just so, it seems so flowery, if you will, just very well put together and well thought out, and it's some of the vocabulary I had to look up quite a bit, actually, and that was commonplace back then. You know what I mean? Yes, Thomas Paine was an educated man, and not everybody was educated, so I understand that wasn't everybody, but that was, anyone who was educated, that's how they spoke. And nowadays, you read it, and it just seems so antiquated almost, which it shouldn't. It's not. It's just because it seems antiquated doesn't mean it's a bad thing, in my opinion. I think we should all kind of take a step back and get back to that, and using words for their true definition, not for what it's become. For sure.
Well, and I think that's an interesting part about language is the evolution of language, like how it evolves, how it changes, how it adapts to the experience and the culture, because of the fact that, like, back then, a lot of those words would have been more common. And in our space, they are extremely less. Now, the beauty of it is that you can find the meaning, understand it, and integrate it in. And again, there's a lot of beautiful words that I think we just kind of lose because of laziness. To kind of piggyback on our last podcast, I think we just kind of get lazy.
I think women really just destroy our language. Moist. What woman doesn't hate the word moist? You know what I mean?
It's true.
It's just such a good adjective. It's a perfect adjective.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Both of our wives hate that word.
Yeah, moist. I don't know what about the word moist that women hate, but moist tends to be a really good adjective. So
that's true. Also, we've lost followers just from that. Saying moist like 5 times. Yeah, it's just like getting too many moists.
Lose my number.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, that was 5 moists. We're out. It's too many. It's too many. But really, I really do think it's a very interesting part of, using profanity. Like, I jokingly say, like the F word can be like an adjective, a noun, a verb. Like, it literally is like, but that's such, I've heard some, English teachers and literature teachers that are just like, a lot of times curse words are, just an example of a very small vocab. Because there's just, people begin to use it for everything instead of utilizing other adjectives, verbs, and stuff like that. But I am like, it also shows the versatility of the word.
Well, in my opinion, I think, I can understand, I guess, where that comes, like, oh, well, you just get lazy and you start using it for everything. I would disagree that, if you use bad words, then it just shows a lack of vocabulary. But they didn't start they might have been more abrasive words, you know what I mean? But or harsh words by definition. But they didn't start out as bad words, you know what I mean, or cuss words or whatever. We made them that way, and there's this particular word that comes to mind, and you can already tell that the fact that I'm not saying it, but there's a particular word that comes to mind that in our culture it's almost visceral. It's like painful to hear it. You're like, oh, it's just so abrasive when you hear it. But then, like, in British culture, and I'm alluding to maybe what this word might be, it's just commonplace. You know what I mean? Like, it's nothing to them, and it's for those of you not caught on yet, it starts with a C, and it's one of those 4-letter words. It just goes to show you that it's a societal thing. It's a cultural thing. And, one thing that I've thought growing up is, so like my grandma, if I'm with my grandma and I say, like, I'm pissed off at somebody, I think that's fine. I grew up saying I'm pissed off or whatever. And I think you brought it up with your grandma-in-law, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like, but if I was like, oh, that pisses me off, she'd be offended by hearing me say that.
Mm-hmm.
And
highly offended.
90% of the world today, of Western culture today, wouldn't even bat an eye.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They wouldn't think anything of it. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to that. I think it's kind of funny because when I think of words and definitions, and when we were kind of talking about this topic beforehand, specific categories of words would come to mind. Obviously, cuss words are one of them. One of them for me, I think, is retard. I think the word retard is. There's been people in my life that have heard me say it or whatever, and oh my gosh, spread the word to end the word, or like, I know someone that's mentally handicapped and blah 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 blah. And it's like, I understand that it's been used in an offensive manner, but like a lot of times I've said like, oh, that's retarded, and I'm using it incorrectly. I will say that there's a lot of times that I use that word incorrectly. But one thought that I have is, when people are offended by that, is that it's and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I haven't really bounced this off anybody yet, but isn't that letting the bad guys win, being offended by the word retarded? Because the word retarded means to develop slowly, or means slow. Essentially, there's a lot of application. Fire retardant. Well, retardant. Yes. The root word is retard, and it's to slow the spread of fire. Right, fire retardant.
Yes.
So that's how it started, and it was a medical term for a little while, and then people started using it in an offensive manner, calling other people retarded or whatever. And so I get but wouldn't that be letting the bad guy win? The people that are using it incorrectly and using it offensively, it's like you let them take control of that word, and now it's off limits. You can't say it. Spread the word to end the word. I've heard that so many times about the word retarded specifically. Spread the word to end the word. Yeah. And it's like, but that's letting the bad guy win. You're letting them take control of that word, and now we can't say it because it's so offensive, and now only bad people say it, and blah blah blah. I think the way around that, the way to avoid, is to use it correctly. You know what I mean? And to use that word correctly. And people still say fire retardant, and they're not. People aren't offended by that, but it's the exact same thing.
Yeah. I mean, the root word is the same. And again, I think that's the point where you can take any word and weaponize it if you want. Yeah. But like, it's the same concept as like a gun. A gun is a hunk of metal. It only becomes dangerous. Yes. Yeah. If somebody's using it dangerously. Same concept as the word. The word retarded is just a word. Now, somebody can weaponize that and use that as, as a weapon. But it doesn't mean that the word itself is negative.
Words are tools to assist you in communicating and getting your point across. Even the word tool. I think our generation, I don't know when that started, but calling somebody a tool.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is the thing that sometimes I just laugh that word. Yeah, I just laugh at like, one of the things I remember when it happened that I was just like, this makes no sense to me. And I'm like, this is the point of the fact that, like, with words, people can utilize it in any form or fashion as long as it catches on. But it's the concept of, like, I haven't seen you in a minute. I'm like, that makes no sense to me. That would be that's 60 seconds. It's accurate. But in reality, you haven't seen me in a really long time. I'm like, this makes no sense. What is happening?
It does make grammatical sense. I mean, it makes logical sense. You're correct. You have not seen me if you say that upon sight.
Exactly. But it just shows the fact that you can take anything and make it into something. Like,
yeah, for sure.
It's all dependent on if people accept it, and that's the part. But in reality, that's what all words are. Like, somebody made it up, and then they were like, "Hey, let's start saying this, and it means this." and that's how a lot of words start. And so,
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, though, as far as like you say somebody made it up, but in reality, wouldn't it have been God? You know, that with Adam
for
and
names
Eve,
of things,
when he first created Adam and Eve, he gave them a language. I would imagine he gave them a language. I don't think he was just like, start making noises with that, you know, thing in your face. I mean, there's no words. So he obviously created them with a language. So,
yes,
you know, language in essence came from God. It just depends on what language that is.
Interesting. Yeah, so that's the interesting concept. Like, again, this is a subject, but like, where did language start? And again, from a biblical standpoint, it had to have started from God because he was talking to them. But also, he didn't declare what that language was because nobody knew it. Like his language, the language he created, was from the Hebrew people, but like that wasn't the language that he taught Adam and Eve because it's a different language. So it's like, just again, interesting. Not something that we'll know. We'll have to ask him, but it is interesting to think about the fact that God did give them a language. I've never thought about that because obviously they were talking to him and to each other.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't picture it being a like, you know, cavemen grunts. That's what it was. But
yeah. Well, and that's one thing I realized young growing up, like being taught about cavemen and Neanderthals and everything in school, is that it's like, well, I'm a Christian and I believe in creationism, right? And Adam and Eve had a language and didn't live in caves and club animals, you know, and like they were sophisticated, right? Cain and Abel had crop and livestock because, you know, they were offering it up as a sacrifice. And so, I mean, animals were already domesticated from the beginning of time, right? From the beginning of creation, I guess. And so the whole caveman thing, I think it was right around sixth grade. I remember having a conversation with somebody at school of like, yeah, this doesn't make sense to me. Like cavemen existing. That doesn't compute with, you know, being a Christian and the biblical view of how everything started. And so, and here we are digressing. We're not even talking about language at this point.
Exactly. Welcome to the rabbit hole.
Welcome to
words.
the rabbit hole.
Words. We're going to either give you words or talk about words.
Yeah, ours have many. Our rabbit holes have many offshoots. So we'll get back to it. But anyway, yeah, it's things like that people, I feel, we don't think about on a regular basis. Most of us, by and large, especially Western Christians, don't really think about that like language had to have started with God. There had to have been some language with him that he created us with, whatever that language was. I don't know. And so it all kind of roots from there. But
I mean, I think it's an interesting concept to be able to understand that God, well, obviously God wants us to have language, creates a language, because obviously his main purpose is for us to be able to talk back to him and talk to one another. And so,
well, and you can't think without language. I mean, I think in English because that's my language. You know, foreign speaking individuals speak in different language, or they think in different languages, like in their head. The little voice in their head is in a different language. You know, and that. How else do you think? I mean, I've thought about that with my kids before they can speak, before they understand English. I feel like that's maybe part of the reason as to why maybe you don't have memories from when you're like an infant much, you know, like it's more emotional. Like you have feelings and maybe like a nostalgic feeling almost, or something triggers in your brain that like, that seems super familiar, but you don't know why. But so like an emotional or imagery, you know, but you can't think with words. You can't think through things, you know, and the younger, like Atlas, right? Atlas can talk. He has language, understands English, but his vocabulary is much more limited than mine. And so I think his thinking is limited because of that. Or his ability to think through things. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and I mean, yeah, when you're little, it's more emotional processing. That's the reason why it's like cry and happy. That's really about it. Like that's the expanse of it. It's like I either am content and happy or I'm crying. And that's because it's an emotional response of how you process the world, versus when you start to learn language, you're actually kind of engaging with it in a more complex way. And then you begin to formulate the ability to think through things separately. And it's also a brain development part that's occurring there, where you get to have like this understanding of you and that you're in the world, but also separate from it, and all those different concepts. But it is an interesting part that one of the things that I heard when you truly learn a language is that you start to dream in the language you've learned. And that is the primary communication in that dream. That means it's like fully integrated into the brain to the point where the subconscious is using it as it would your original language that you learned. And so it's a really interesting part that the brain will begin to think and subconsciously dream in that language once it's fully integrated in, because it's a part of who you are. And so, I mean, language in general, words, it becomes a part where, a lot of times trying to translate words is difficult, because some languages have more like, oh, you don't have a word for this. Yeah. And it's something unique and kind of more complex.
Yeah, I've even found that learning German, where it's there's times where it's not a 1-for-1 translation. You know what I mean? Like if you were to do like a word for word translation, it's like maybe you could get the gist of it in English, but it seems kind of weird. Or well, and how there's romantic languages as well, with like Italian and French and what's the other? I think there's like Spanish. 3 in there. Spanish. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's I feel like a deep rabbit hole if we wanted to continue to research and cover and all that fun stuff. But
yeah, I mean, I think again, understanding the importance of words, because I think we also use them callously. Like we just speak and use words as if they are not. We don't use them in the correct definition. So a concept that we've talked about before is the concept of love. I love my wife. I love my children. I love God. And then out of the same mouth, I'll say like, I love pizza. And like the fact that I'm saying I love for all of those, but I'm not emphasizing the degree. Like that's the thing I think is really beautiful about different languages, is typically there's words that emphasize different concepts. The aspect of like agape love is different than just like romantic love. And so, and that other word is escaping me right now. But that concept I think is really important to recognize, because we need to use more adjectives within our communication. But I think oftentimes we get kind of just like lazy or callous, where we're not speaking the depth of what we're feeling to communicate that to another person.
Yeah. Well, I agree that there's certain things that are lost with that. And like when you were talking about words being, I mean, I guess I would put it, they almost like it gets muddled down like with love, right? I love my wife, love pizza, love God, sort of thing. It gets muddled down in the meaning of it. And I've actually thought about that. Like sometimes it almost becomes automatic. Like, am I really thinking about what I'm saying? Like when I say I love you at the end, we're going to sleep and I'm telling my wife, night love you sort of thing. It just becomes this automatic thing. And am I really, I do love my wife. But am I really thinking about it when I say it to her? Yeah. And
or
what it means.
K love you bye. K love you bye. It's not even like separate words. It's like K love you bye. It's like it's one thing as you like done.
Yeah, exactly.
And what are you actually saying?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I mean, even like the word awesome, right? Especially in Western civilization, like awesome gets used for everything. And should it be? Like, are you really, is this situation really filling you with awe? Is that what you're really feeling from this situation? Is just a sense of awe and reverence almost? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think that's really what's happening in this situation when you said awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but in reality, it's used for like silly things. I think that's like one of the things that you start to realize is like I'm using words for like when I say I love pizza, in reality I should be like I really like pizza. Do I love pizza? No, I really like it though. Like that concept of being like this is awesome or is like this really cool. There's a difference. Like God is awesome. God's not really cool. He's more than that.
I think having a better vocabulary is I think would help with that. I think that was probably one thing. Lack of education throughout the years, society developing and everything, but people with lack of education and using these words because they don't know other words to use in their place. You know what I mean? They don't, or rather than just saying, "Oh, I really, really like pizza." Well, my feelings towards pizza are more than just really, really like, but I don't have a word for it, so I'm going to say love.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's not jumping and kind of finding that part. So with my clients, like I will use what's called a feelings wheel. And it's at the very center, it's got a concept of like sad, mad, afraid. I think it's happy. And then from there, each section, so like the center part is like that, and it's got like pies that go off from there. And there's just like probably 30 or 40 words per each pie. And so like you can go start with like the basics and then go out from there. And I'm like, this is really helpful, especially with people who are trying to learn how to express an emotion or are struggling with like anger. Because it's like, well, I'm angry. Well, there's a difference between like frustrated or agitated and murderous. So which one are we? So but you start to recognize like, there's a difference between being, I'm frustrated right now. Okay, well, that's something that we can work through right now. If I'm enraged or I'm murderous, okay, we're getting to the point where like people need to leave you, like escape. But this is a concept where like that word changes everything. Like it changes how people respond. It changes how people will interact with you, and that's the beauty of more in-depth vocab that you really can help another person connect with where you're at. I think it just helps effectively
all your relationships. I think communication, the breakdown, and I can't remember if I really brought this up, and if I did, I don't think we really talked about it at length, but with the topic of divorce. If I didn't, I should have, but just things that I have seen, and I've not gone through divorce myself, but things that I have seen with divorce. A lot of it, I think, really just boils down to a lot of issues in general. Not just divorce, but a lot of issues can be solved with better communication across the board. And it's like there's so many marriages that I see that just fall apart because we're not communicating properly, and we think we are, to our limited degree, but we're not truly understanding how our partner is receiving things, how they are understanding what we're putting across, and me talking a lot, I think has helped. I mean, it's evolved, thank God, over time with Caitlin and I in our marriage, but there's still a lot of times where Caitlin and I are definitely different in great ways, right? I think we both kind of fill in our each other's weaknesses a little bit, and but one area that she's always struggled with, I think, is just expressing her emotions. She's just tends to be pretty reserved and not necessarily she doesn't wear her emotions on her sleeve, which I very much appreciate that. But I like to talk about things, and I come from a family that whole immediate family is very open about a lot of stuff, very open communication for sure.
Stuff. Yes.
Of all the stuff, and just to put it into perspective, my dad was in the military, has been deployed a few times, and when he would come home after a long period away, Mom would be like, "All right, go find friends' houses to stay at this weekend because Dad's coming home." It was open communication, which especially back then, I'm like, "Oh, Mom, come on!" But in hindsight, I appreciate that. It just having that open communication, I think, has really helped our relationships along the way. As siblings, with my sisters and with my parents. But any relationship, kind of getting off track here. But so I am good at, I'm good at talking. I'm really good at talking about stuff.
You are good.
So
good at talking.
But so when Caitlin and I get into a disagreement or an argument or whatever, she's usually the first one to shut down in the sense of okay, well, whatever, we just don't need to talk about it anymore. There's nothing else to talk about. And I'm like, are we still mad at each other? Are you still mad at me for some reason? And if that's the case, then yeah, absolutely, there's still stuff to talk about. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I promise you, we need to keep talking. We need to figure out really what's going on here, get to the bottom of it, because a lot of the time, even when you think the situation's been resolved and your argument's been resolved, usually you just scratch the surface. Maybe you just hit a symptom of it. You know what I mean? And you really haven't gotten to the bottom of what is going on. What is the underlying issue here? Why are we mad at each other? Why are we at each other's throats? Whatever the case may be. So one marriage that I know of that has fallen apart, from my very, very limited knowledge. So I'm just going to throw it out there. From my very, very limited knowledge of what went on in this relationship, is that it was a breakdown sexually. And one partner shut down in that regard, and the other one didn't want to because we're married, and you shouldn't. You should always be, sexually active and with your spouse if you're married. And so from what I can tell from that situation is that there was no communication on that front. And I feel like, especially nowadays, man, there's so many couples that just, it's like this weird taboo thing. You don't want to talk about sex, and you don't want to talk about what your interests are, what gets you going, what turns you on. It's like that. What do you mean? You're married. Sex should be this awesome thing to just go explore with your partner. Obviously, as long as you're keeping it holy, it's a holy act for sure. And it's that you need to have that communication. You need to feel comfortable about talking, with your partner about that. And otherwise, you'll see a breakdown in your entire relationship, all because of communication. And it's like me babbling on right now. I should shut up. See, I told you at the
No,
beginning of
I
this
mean-
that I'm working on it.
But
I've said
you're
the same thing like 100
100%
times,
correct.
but that's what I've gathered, right? Is that there's a lot
Yeah,
of marriages I've seen
absolutely.
fall apart, and every time I go to analyze, okay, what went wrong here? Okay, on the surface, so and so cheated on so and so. Well, in my experience, cheating is never the issue; it's always a symptom. It's never the root issue. It's just a symptom of what's
Yeah.
really going on. And okay, well, so and so wasn't happy in the bedroom because there was no bedroom time. There was no sex, right? So they're going to go seek it elsewhere, whether it's pornography, whether it's an actual person, that's a void in their life that needs to be filled by their marriage partner, that by their spouse, and they'll find it elsewhere. And it all could have been avoided if people just talked about it.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Well, and it's this part to be able to recognize that a lot of the communication is needing to be able to have communication about all things with yourself and with your spouse and or really important relationships in your life. First of all, there's some things that, again, because of painful past, all these different things that we won't talk about with our own selves, within our minds, in those spaces. And so,
Got some guests.
Pause.
Hold on.
oh, cool.
You won? You won trouble? Oh, no, what? Fair and square.
Yeah.
Fair and square.
I mean, there was
Yeah.
a couple times I could have knocked him home and I didn't. But
Yeah. Did you win with blue?
No, you got fourth place.
Oh, how convenient. Dad leaves the game table and he just happens to lose when someone's supposed to be playing with it or playing for him. Cool. Okay. Say hi and bye.
Hi, bye.
Hi everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Say it.
Bye.
Say it one more first hold again.
Bye.
I'm so vain.
All right. See you, dude.
See
Probably
you.
think this song is about you, don't you? Don't
Yeah.
you?
That's my son.
Say goodnight.
Bye.
Good night. Love you.
Bye.
He loves looking at himself in the camera.
I love it. He does. He's gonna be a little. You guys should get him in as a little baby model.
No. We've had people say that. I'm like, seriously, you should like look into like modeling for your kids. I'm like, it doesn't always
money off of
go
'em.
south, but yeah, right. But that route tends to
How
lead
much?
to a lot of
Hey, you know
bad
what? All you're
things.
trying to do is break even for how much they cost. That's all you're doing. So I'm just trying to recoup my
let
money
them pay
back.
for themselves. Yeah, let them pay
Exactly.
for themselves.
But yeah, anyways, back to what we were saying. You're 100% correct. Communication is absolutely needed. And in reality, like I was saying, you need communication. You need to be able to talk through and have healthy communication within your own mind, as well as with other people that are important to you. That's another thing that I think is really important. The way we use words within our mind is something that in reality Christ talked about. He's like, you saying, cruelty to another person. But like, if you think those things in your mind, you've committed that sin within your heart. And that's a concept that I think is important, not even for others, but also to ourselves. Sometimes we can be our worst critic and be extremely harsh with ourselves with our words within our mind, because we have that language and that communication within our own mind. It can be really unhealthy, and it can be a place where we really kind of extend depressive symptoms into like a full-blown depression, depending on how you communicate with yourself. So like how you think about things and how you talk through things is really important. And it's like kind of that concept of like out of the heart, like is what the mouth will speak. And it's the way you think about things in your mind is going to have a pretty big impact on how you speak to others and how you communicate and engage. And so there's I think an important part where you kind of like see like the circles as they go out, and one of the most important ones is that internal communication, because that leads to all the other ways you communicate to others and people. And in reality, spouses often don't talk about the things that are going in internally within them, and they're talking about it in their own mind, and that's how they start to make and formulate these ideas of like, I'm going to go and have an affair, and they've been having this whole conversation with themselves of like, you're not having sex with me? Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and find what I want. Well, why aren't you talking in depth?
Yeah, say
with
that.
your partner.
Say that to him.
Get it out. Get it out.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing talking to yourself?
Yeah,
Like,
probably going to start an
that's not gonna
argument, but
fix it.
that's communication, right? As long as we can make this
Yes.
productive, let's talk about it. That's why, like, the whole, like, don't go, the advice, the marriage advice of, like, don't go to bed angry. I get that in a sense. I mean, sometimes you're going to go to bed angry. You know what I mean? And I think that's okay, but I think really where that comes from, as far as I can tell, I think where that comes from is like basically like don't go to bed angry and then wake up and be like, okay, I'm over it, and move on, because that leaves things on the table. It leaves stuff unresolved. You know what I mean? So if there's things that still need to be discussed and things that need to be resolved, then resolve them. Don't go to bed on it and wake up in the morning and be like, okay, I'm over it. I slept on it and we're good. Sometimes you do need to separate.
That's the biblical part.
And step away and evaluate yourself and how really you're reacting to the situation. Am I being too emotional? Do I need to just take a step back and calm down before I jump back into this? That sort of thing.
And that's kind of one of the things that, because what you're talking about, it comes from scripture of do not let the sun go down on your anger. And it's the concept of, you need, what I tell people is that sometimes you don't get everything fully resolved within that moment, but especially with marital clients, I'm like, you guys should still be able to say that your relationship is more than this argument. Like if you can't muster up the fact that you're like, hey, I still love you, still pissed off, we still need to work on this, but like we're good. And I want you to know that part. That holds it till we have the time to do the bigger processing. And it also can be able to be a space of saying like, I can't get into it right now because I'm not in a good place. Like maybe I'm really frustrated and I'm seeing red and I need to calm down. And I'm going to use sleep to get me there. But I want you to know that we're good. And this is a me thing, not an us thing. And if you can do that, I don't think you're letting the sun go down on your anger. I think you're able to like kind of recognize that like we still need to process, but like I'm not to the point where we're against each other anymore. Yeah. We just haven't figured it all out.
Well, and there's certain disagreements that it's like, okay, we don't need to stay up till 4 a.m. and lose all the sleep, when we both have to work in the the and then we're going to be even more pissed off because we're exhausted and we've had a bad day because we're exhausted. And then we're going to come home. Yeah, we got children, and then we're going to come home, and our kids are going to be going crazy, and like then it's just going to get worse and worse. So, sometimes you do need to go to bed angry. You just need to understand exactly, like don't let the sun go down on that anger, on that disagreement. Like talk about it, finish what you started until you come to some sort of resolution.
Yeah, and I think it's an important part to recognize that communication is all about making sure both parties are in a place to receive. Because oftentimes, especially us talkers, we are ready to talk. But if the person's not ready to hear, that's the reason why I think it has
too bad,
multiple times in the Bible.
You're going to have to hear because I'm not going to shut up.
The concept of like those who have ears to hear, listen. So like it's the concept of like multiple times in the Bible, it's like you need to have ears to hear, not just blatantly like say stuff. And that's I think an important part where we need to be, communication, use of words needs to be, is my audience or the person I'm communicating to, are they in a place that they will hear my words well? Because if not, then why am I speaking? Because if it's just me to hear myself talk, then there's no point. So this is a part where I think it's very helpful to take a break, calm down, because maybe one party is ready to talk and the other one's not. Well, it's going to end up poorly, and a lot of what that person wants to talk about is not going to be received, and so it's not effective there. But to be able to say, hey, let's take a little bit of a break, let's set a time for us to talk about this, go to sleep, wake up in the morning and talk about it, or wait till the kids are in sleep, and recognize that we can still have a good connection time until then. Like, even though that part is unresolved, that's one part of our humongous relationship.
Yep.
Like, our relationship is going to outlast this. So we need to remember that and give space so we can have actual good communication where we won't use unhealthy words or cruelty to try to gain control, or, harshness, like all those things. A lot of it is because we haven't given the space to get into that healthier mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've definitely gone down the offshoot of words into communication, into, marriage advice, and how it affects just relationships in general, though, honestly, not just marriages, but, I would say a good, healthy marriage involves arguments.
Oh, 100%.
Disagreements. Because
Absolutely.
If my wife didn't challenge me, because that's where it comes from, I challenge her on a regular basis, and she doesn't challenge me as much as I think I need to be challenged, just because I need to be kept in check. I need to be held accountable. You know what I mean? But I just think about, like, oh yeah, we never fight and we never argue, and it's like, how boring is that? I'm not saying that you need to argue to spice up the marriage, but it's like, you need to challenge each other. You have to have someone who challenges you and who drives you to be better and to hold you accountable, and you can't have that without open communication. You have to be willing to. There should be no walls in a marriage. The Bible talks about cleaving yourself to your spouse, leaving your father and mother, cleaving yourself to your spouse, becoming one flesh. And that is, I feel like, so overlooked in modern society, and just like, wow, well, clearly we're not one flesh. I know we've got friends who they're married and they still have separate bank accounts. Well, it's it's my money. Like, it's my job, and like, that's the money I get. And it's like, no, no, that's retarded. There we go. Bringing this full circle. That's retarded. That's retarded to do something like that. You're developing slowly in the area of your marriage, because and I will say, when we first got married, I was not ready to be a husband. I didn't realize it. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I love her. To my limited knowledge of what love is, she loved me at my worst for some reason. She's still here, and I really like her. I want to be with her for forever. Did I really think that the covenant that I was entering, like, I didn't even think of it as a covenant at the time. So yeah, I was very ignorant and very unprepared to become a husband. I like to think that I've been able to step into the role a little bit better lately, in my later years. And we've been going on 10 years of marriage in August. That's crazy.
It is crazy.
But it's just, it really, it just comes down to communication. I'm trying to keep this short. Well, shut up now. It comes down to communication. Talk to your spouse. You know what I mean? You need to be one flesh. You need to become one with each other, and there should be no boundaries. That's one thing that I've talked to you about recently with my friendships. I've realized in my friendships a lot that we've created these boundaries for what? I don't understand why, just societal boundaries. Oh, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about things like that. And so we've created these boundaries in our friendships, and it's like, I consider you one of my best friends. And well, if that's the case, why can't I talk to you about everything? I should be able to just spill my guts. You know what I mean? Like, and we need to be, there shouldn't be these walls of communication specifically that are built between friends. And if you're not acting correct, I should be able to tell you, and you should be able to, maybe not in the moment, right? If there's emotions involved, I get it, but you should be able to at some point understand that came from a place of love, and maybe I'm right, maybe you're right, maybe I'm wrong, but like I'm trying to love you and hold you accountable in one way or another. And loving somebody isn't always sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it's giving them the cold, hard truth and hurting their feelings.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'd much rather have hurt feelings from a person who I know cares about me and loves me than to have somebody who doesn't tell me sweet things that make me feel good. But then I will end up going into a really unhealthy place. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the power of
social media
words.
Right there. That is
gosh, yes.
Social media content creators. They seek the affirmation of random people on the internet that half of them are bots, but it's, it creates these terrible, terrible psychological issues and disorders, within them.
Yeah, no, it really does. And it's extremely dangerous, where in reality, what you need is a few people that you can be extremely deep and open and have that just real communication versus thousands of people who you have really no communication with and no authenticity. That's the beauty of what relationships are and what words are, is such a powerful thing. Words can be used to deceive, but it can be used to bring the truth and openness in such a powerful way. And in reality, that's where I think relationships can be the best, is in that space, no matter what relationship you're talking about. And so, again, coming full circle is being able to recognize words are the way to be able to communicate effectively, and your words matter. So absolutely. We need to be recognizing what we're saying and how we're saying it. So I think that's a good place that we can put a pin in it, stop there.
Put a pin.
And we will come back to this next episode.
In 5 minutes. Next episode. Catch you there, folks.